Everyone warned Dorothy she would crumble. At 71, newly widowed after 48 years of marriage. Her family gathered in her living room like she was already gone. Her daughter flew in from Seattle. Her son took time off work. They sat her down with brochures for senior communities, lists of assisted living facilities, and phone numbers for grief counselors. They spoke in hushed tones about the transition and making things easier. But Dorothy did something none of them expected. She looked at all those brochures, set them aside, and said, "I'm staying right here, in my home, by myself." That was 2 years ago. And here's what nobody saw coming. Least of all Dorothy herself. She has never felt more alive. This video explores why living alone after 60 might just be the best thing that ever happened to you. I know that sounds almost reckless to say out loud. We've been conditioned to believe that solitary living in our later years is something to dread, a sign of failure, abandonment, or decline. The culture around us treats it like a tragedy waiting to unfold. But what if everything we've been told is backwards? What if living alone could open doors you didn't even know existed? Imagine this. It's a quiet Tuesday morning. You wake up when your body decides to wake up, not when someone else's alarm goes off. You brew your coffee exactly how you like it, strong with a splash of cream, and you take it out to your back porch. The birds are singing, the newspaper is waiting, and the entire day stretches before you like an open road with no destination required. No one needs anything from you. No one is asking what's for dinner. No one is channel surfing while you're trying to read. Just you, the morning air, and a profound sense of peace you haven't felt in decades. By the time you finish watching this, I hope you'll see living alone not as something to survive, but as an invitation most people never receive. The real question isn't whether you can manage on your own. It's whether you're willing to discover who you become when you finally have the space to find out. Think about it. For most of your adult life, you've shared your living space with someone, parents and siblings. When you were young, roommates in your 20s, a spouse, children, maybe even aging parents of your own. Your daily life has been shaped by others' needs, preferences, and schedules. You've spent decades accommodating, adjusting, and compromising. And somewhere along the way, you may have lost track of what you actually want when no one else is factored in. Living alone changes everything. So let me walk you through 12 remarkable benefits of solo living after 60. Benefits that rarely get discussed, but that could completely reshape how you view this chapter of your life. Benefit number 1. Your home finally becomes yours. Every corner of your space can now reflect who you are, not who you had to become to keep the peace. Want the thermostat set at 74 degrees year-round? Done. Prefer eating dinner at 8:30 instead of 6? Go ahead. Feel like leaving your half-finished puzzle spread across the dining table for a week? Nobody's going to say a word about it. This might sound trivial, but it's not. Research on aging and well-being consistently shows that older adults who exercise full control over their home environment report measurably higher psychological satisfaction. Your surroundings affect your nervous system more than you realize. Those constant micro-adjustments to accommodate another person, dozens of times each day, create a subtle but persistent form of stress. Remove that pressure, and something in you unwinds. You sleep more soundly. You breathe more deeply. You feel more at home in your own home. Benefit number 2. Living according to your own rhythm. For years, maybe decades, your schedule has bent around someone else's. Perhaps your husband was up at 5 and liked the lights on, Perhaps your wife preferred dinner at a certain hour. Perhaps your kids' activities dictated your entire weekly calendar. Solo living means your days can finally sync with your natural patterns instead of fighting against them. Scientists who study biological rhythms have documented that each person has a distinct internal clock. Some of us are genuinely wired for early mornings. Others come alive after dark. Forcing yourself to live against your natural rhythm for years on end wears on you in ways you might not even recognize until it stops. My friend Richard, 74, told me he spent his entire marriage pretending to be a morning person because his wife was. So, 6 months after she passed, he finally admitted to himself that he's happiest staying up until midnight reading history books and sleeping until 9. 40 years, he said, shaking his head. 40 years I fought my own body clock. I had no idea how exhausted that made me. Benefit number 3, dramatically less daily friction. Let's be honest with each other. Even in the happiest relationships, cohabitation creates friction, small irritations, unspoken frustrations, the constant low-level negotiation of shared space. Who left the kitchen doors open? Why is the television so loud? Do you really have to make that sound when you eat? Solo living makes all of that simply evaporate. No one is leaving cabinet doors open. No one is monopolizing the bathroom. No one is doing that one thing that's driven you quietly crazy for 30 years. Research analyzing large population samples found something fascinating. While people in relationships often report higher overall life satisfaction, those living alone consistently report lower daily stress and irritation. The absence of interpersonal friction contributes significantly to emotional stability. Your home becomes what it should be, a sanctuary where you can let your guard completely down. Benefit number 4, the chance to truly know yourself. Something might surprise you here. Many people reach their 60s or 70s having spent so much of their lives defined by their roles: spouse, parent, employee, caretaker, that they've lost touch with who they actually are underneath all of it. Solo living creates space for a kind of self-discovery that's rare at any age, without another person's presence constantly shaping your decisions and behaviors. You start to uncover layers of yourself you may have buried decades ago. You might realize you love classical music, but never played it because your spouse preferred silence. And you might discover you're more introverted than you thought, or that you have a talent for watercolors, or that you genuinely enjoy your own company more than you expected. The psychologist Carl Jung wrote extensively about what he called individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self. He observed that this process often accelerates in the second half of a life. Living alone can be a powerful catalyst. You're no longer performing for anyone. You're just being. And in that being, parts of yourself that have been sleeping for years begin to wake up. Benefit number 5, learning the difference between solitude and loneliness. Most people use these words interchangeably, but they describe completely different experiences. Loneliness is painful. It's the ache of disconnection, the sense that you lack meaningful human contact. Solitude, on the other hand, is chosen time alone, time that can be deeply nourishing, restorative, even joyful. Research on well-being has shown that people who regularly engage in intentional solitude experience greater creativity, better emotional regulation, and a stronger sense of self. The key word is intentional. Choosing to be alone rather than feeling abandoned to it transforms the entire experience. And here's something beautiful that happens. When you become genuinely comfortable with your own company, you often become more appealing to others. You approach relationships from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. You connect because you want to, not because you're desperate to fill a void. Benefit number 6, complete financial clarity. Being the only one making financial decisions simplifies everything. There's no negotiating over purchases, no tension about spending priorities, no resentment is building over money habits that clash. You decide what matters, and you spend accordingly. If you spent years in a relationship where finances were a source of conflict, or where you weren't fully involved in managing the money, living alone offers a fresh start. You gain crystal clarity about what's coming in and what's going out. You create a budget that reflects your actual values. Maybe you'd rather drive a modest car and spend more on travel. Maybe you'd prefer a smaller home and more money for hobbies. The choices become yours alone. This kind of financial autonomy isn't just practical. It's empowering. Knowing you can handle your own money, make your own decisions, and plan your own future builds confidence that no one can take from you. Benefit number 7. Room for your mind to breathe. Living with another person means constant input, conversation, questions, the ambient noise of someone else's activities, even in the quietest households. Another person's presence occupies mental space. Solo living gives your mind room to wander, to wonder, to create. No one is pulling your attention. No interruptions. No background hum of another life happening alongside yours. Throughout history, artists, writers, and thinkers have sought solitude because they understood something essential. Creativity requires space. Virginia Woolf wrote passionately about the necessity of having a room of one's own. Many of history's most significant ideas emerged from minds that had room to explore. You might find that this new chapter unlocks creative impulses you didn't know you had. Maybe you start writing. Maybe you take up photography. Maybe you rearrange your entire garden or teach yourself to cook dishes you've always wanted to try. Without someone else's needs constantly demanding your attention, your own creative instincts finally have room to surface. Benefit number 8. Intentional rather than default socializing. Now, I want to address something important here. Earlier, I mentioned that living alone reduces daily friction and stress. You might wonder, doesn't maintaining friendships require effort too? Doesn't that create its own kind of stress? Here's the distinction. The stress of cohabitation is constant and often invisible. Like background noise you stop noticing, but that still wears you down. Maintaining friendships is intermittent and voluntary. You decide when to engage. You recover fully between interactions, and critically, the quality of those chosen connections tends to be much higher than relationships of convenience. Solo living doesn't mean isolation. For many people, it actually leads to a richer social life because every interaction becomes a conscious choice rather than a default. You become more deliberate about nurturing connections. You make plans. You pick up the phone. You cultivate a circle of friends rather than relying on a single relationship to meet all your social needs. And because your social time is chosen rather than obligatory, it tends to be more meaningful. You spend time with people because you genuinely want to, not because they happen to share your address. Benefit number 9. Freedom from the constant caretaking role. Many people have spent their adult lives caring for others, raising children, supporting a spouse, looking after aging parents. The caretaking never seemed to end, and your own needs were perpetually last on the list. Living alone can represent the first time in your adult life when you're not responsible for anyone else's well-being. You can prioritize your own health, your own interests, your own happiness without guilt or divided attention. You can finally be the primary character in your own story. This shift can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if your identity was built around being needed. I'll be honest, the first few weeks can feel disorienting. You might catch yourself looking for someone to take care of. But that discomfort passes, and what emerges on the other side is a kind of freedom that's been a long time coming. Benefit number 10. Permission to define happiness on your own terms. Sharing your life with others inevitably involves compromise. Maybe you always wanted to travel, but your partner preferred staying home. Maybe you dreamed of downsizing to a small cottage, but your family needed space. Maybe you would have chosen a different city, a different lifestyle, a different pace entirely. Living alone strips away the need for negotiation. You get to ask yourself directly, what does a good life look like for me? What actually makes me happy? What would I do if I only had to please myself? Then you can build that life without apology. Some people discover they want adventure. Others find they crave simplicity. Whatever your version of happiness looks like, living alone gives you the freedom to pursue it wholeheartedly. Benefit number 11. Growing confidence in your own capabilities. Living alone isn't always easy. You're responsible for everything: household repairs, financial decisions, medical appointments, and daily logistics. There's no one to hand things off to or hide behind, but something remarkable happens when you successfully navigate these challenges. You prove to yourself that you're capable. Every problem you solve, every obstacle you overcome, every situation you handle builds your confidence. You start to trust yourself in ways you might not have before. People often discover skills and strengths they never knew they possessed. Managing investments for the first time, fixing a leaky faucet, learning to navigate technology that once seemed impossibly complicated. Each small victory reinforces a powerful truth. I can do this. I'm more capable than I realized. This isn't about refusing help when you need it. It's about knowing, deep in your bones, that you can handle things on your own when necessary. That knowledge becomes a source of quiet pride that stays with you. Benefit number 12. The gift of genuine presence. Solo living makes you more attuned to the present moment, without another person's needs constantly pulling your attention. You notice things you might have missed for years. The way afternoon light falls across your kitchen floor, the smell of rain through an open window, the particular pleasure of a meal you prepared exactly as you wanted it. This heightened awareness transforms ordinary moments into sources of quiet contentment. You're not rushing through your day managing someone else's schedule. You move at your own pace, savoring what deserves to be savored. Researchers have documented extensive benefits of this kind of mindful presence: reduced anxiety, improved emotional balance, better sleep, and stronger immune function. Living alone creates natural conditions for this awareness to flourish. You're not meditating on a mountaintop. You're just paying attention to your actual life. Now, I need to be honest about something. Living alone isn't without challenges, and pretending otherwise would insult your intelligence. There are hard parts. Health scares feel scarier when there's no one in the next room. A fall in the bathroom, a sudden chest pain, a dizzy spell on the stairs. These moments carry more weight when you're alone. The economics aren't always favorable either. One person paying for a whole house, a whole set of utilities, a whole life, costs more per capita than sharing expenses. And yes, despite everything I've said about solitude versus loneliness, there will be moments when the distinction blurs. Sunday evenings can be hard. Holidays can ache. The silence that feels peaceful at noon can feel heavy at midnight. I'm not going to pretend these challenges don't exist. They do. But here's what I've observed. The people who thrive living alone aren't the ones who never feel these difficulties. They're the ones who've decided that the benefits outweigh the costs. They've built systems, medical alert devices, regular check-in calls with friends, and community connections that provide both safety and companionship. They've come to terms with the trade-offs. And when you weigh it honestly, for many people, The freedom and self-discovery on one side of the scale more than balances the difficulties on the other. Dorothy, from the beginning of this video, told me something recently that stuck with me. She said the first few months were brutal. She'd reach for the phone to call her husband before remembering he was gone. She'd set 2 places at the table out of habit. She cried in the shower so her visiting children wouldn't worry. But somewhere around month 4, something shifted. She stopped feeling as though she were enduring her life and began feeling as though she were living it. She took a watercolor class she'd wanted to try for 20 years. She rearranged every room in the house to suit her own taste. She started having friends over for long dinners on her own schedule. Now, 2 years in, I asked her if she'd consider remarrying or moving in with family. She laughed. I had no idea I could be this content. She said, "I feel strange saying it, but I think I was made for this chapter. I just didn't know it until I got here." She's not alone in feeling that way. So if you're living alone right now, or facing the prospect of it, consider this question. What if this isn't an ending, but a beginning? What if some of your best years are still ahead, defined not by who lives with you, but by who you're becoming? You can spend your days grieving what was, or you can spend them discovering what could be. You can measure your life by absence, or you can measure it by presence. Your presence, showing up fully for yourself, perhaps for the first time ever. I've watched people take both paths, and the ones who choose to embrace this chapter rather than mourn it, they find something they didn't expect, a kind of peace, a kind of freedom, a kind of self-knowledge that makes them more whole than they've ever been. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If something in this video spoke to you, I'd be grateful if you shared it with someone standing at this crossroads. And if you want more conversations like this one, conversations that treat this stage of life as an opening rather than a closing, subscribe and stick around. I want to hear from you, not just the usual great video comments, though those are nice too. If you live alone, what surprised you most? What did you discover about yourself that you didn't expect? Or if you're considering it, what scares you? And what secretly excites you? Your story might be the one that helps someone else take the leap. Until next time, remember this: being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. And sometimes, the best company you'll ever keep has been waiting inside you all along. Take good care of yourself.